the US CPI numbers are out and inflation came out at 9.1%, higher than what most people were predicting. Most people were predicting about 8.8%. Now, what does that mean, right? Before we get that, the most exciting thing about this, or the most shocking thing, is not that the number was higher than expectations. The most shocking thing was that the price of crypto assets did not dump the same way they did when the previous inflation numbers were announced. What that means is that the market is getting used to living in or operating in a high inflation environment. But operating in a high inflation environment is game changing for the crypto space. Let's remember, one of the reasons Bitcoin was created was to be a hedge against inflation. Not exactly that, but that's one of the use cases of Bitcoin. And most people argue that how come we have high inflation and the prices of crypto are dumping with everything else? The reason is simple. One of the main drivers of inflation, hyperinflation, is expectation of inflation. So Bitcoin was not working, or cryptocurrencies were not working as an inflation hedge because people didn't expect inflation. Everyone thought inflation was transitory. In fact, most people still believe inflation is transitory because they do believe that the Fed will get a hold of this and solve inflation once and for all. The biggest problem, though, one of the biggest problems to that, one of the problems for the Fed to solve inflation is that inflation is a global phenomenon right now. So it's not just up to the Fed to solve inflation. It's up to almost every country to solve inflation. And the inflation problem is different for different countries, which makes it super difficult to solve. What do I mean by that? Right? The US dollar is at 9.1% inflation, right? Year over year. And here's the thing. The dollar is still gaining massive amounts of value against other currencies. A few days ago, US dollar and the euro reached parity, meaning $1 for €1. Now, if you take a look at the chart, it wasn't always like this. This is I think a 20-year high, right, for the dollar. So the dollar is gaining value. Now, think of it for most countries, even outside the euro area, right? Think of less developed countries. They need to buy stuff in US dollars. But US dollar is gaining value incredibly. Their currency is facing significant inflation. So now you get to a point where prices are up in your own local currencies and they're even higher in US dollars, and you need US dollars to buy stuff. That really makes it super difficult for those countries. So if the US continues to fight inflation and the US dollar continues to appreciate in value, that makes it even harder for all those other countries that need the dollar to buy stuff that they need. For that reason, I think that the Federal Reserve will be forced to ease up on hiking interest rates. They will be forced to slow down on solving inflation, which means that we might be moving into a hyperinflationary environment. And that sounds bad, but in the long term, what that does is it will bring massive amounts of capital to crypto. Because despite the fact that we have high inflation, despite the fact that we have things seem to be getting tougher and people are expecting a recession, there's massive amounts of cash on the sidelines. And if we have like right now with the 9.1% CPI, right, that means that your money is losing 9.1% year over year. If you have 100,000, you're losing 9,100 purchasing power per year on it. And every year you're losing more and more and more and more and more and more. And this is what will make crypto assets much more attractive. People will start looking for a store of value, a place to store wealth. This is the whole Michael Saylor thesis. This is where it starts to play out. Now, the argument that we get into a recession, that argument is actually a bullish argument, because that argument is suggesting that inflation will be solved. Right? So in cases where we get into a recession, it means that inflation will be solved, because high interest rates force people into a recession. But I believe that we have enough money in circulation right now for hyperinflation. And I believe that the Federal Reserve doesn't have the full tools to solve inflation because of how interconnected the world is and because of problems that will arise elsewhere. We've already seen, we are kind of at the beginning of this, we've already seen what's happening in Sri Lanka, right? We're already seeing what's happening there. Now imagine that multiplied to much more countries, what that would do. Imagine the size of a new refugee crisis that we could see because of that. So I don't see a world in which we continue to go aggressively in fighting inflation because of the interconnectedness of the world and the other problems that will unveil because of that. So all in all, I do think that we will see massive amounts of capital getting into the crypto space to work as a store of value, because I think inflation is just going to go rampant. Now, obviously, this is what I think will happen. But as an investor, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. for the past few months, right, the best asset to hold has been the US dollar, right? So that might stay the case for a very long time. This whole inflation thesis may not play out. So it's always good to have a diversified strategy, or a strategy where you win either way, right? You don't want to be full on, you don't want to be full on everything, everything into crypto. You also don't want to be completely out with no crypto at all. So all in all, use this information however you want, but remember, it is absolutely not financial advice. Do whatever you want with your money. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and I will see you again next time. Let me know what you think about this thesis. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Right? Or which other points? Do you think that we just get into a recession and we get into deflation, and then dollar keeps going to the moon, and maybe euro starts to go to the moon as well, right? Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below, and thank you for watching. I'll see you again next time.